Right, let us come to the urgent question. Kevin Hollinrake.
Mr Speaker, thank you for granting this urgent question, which is to ask the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities, Local Government if she will make a statement on the disruption to waste collection and the deployment of the military in Birmingham.
Minister.
Thank you. Before I start, can I first of all start by recognising the significant contribution of Pope Francis on his passing, and also as the Minister for Local Government in England, can I wish everyone a happy St George's Day for tomorrow. Mr Speaker, members across the House will be aware of the continuing disruption caused by industrial action in Birmingham. The Government has repeatedly called for Unite to call off the strikes and accept the fair deal that's on the table. The Commissioners and the Council are undertaking necessary reforms in the context of a challenging financial situation. The legacy of equal pay, where women workers were systematically paid less than their male counterparts for similar roles, and though of course the Council must chart that course themselves, our actions speak to our determination for the welfare of the citizens of Birmingham. We've been providing intensive support to the Council in its efforts to address the backlog of waste that has been building up on the city's streets, and significant progress has been made in the last fortnight. Through a concerted effort, and with the assistance of other councils, private operators, and the endeavour of many hundreds of determined workers who have worked extremely long hours, the result, 26,000 tonnes of excess waste have been removed, and the levels are now approaching normal. More than 100 bin trucks are out every day, and regular bin collections have resumed. The Council continues to monitor the situation closely to ensure that waste does not build up again. This is a government that stands up for working people. The industrial action is in no one's interest, because the deal on the table is a good deal. The Council has worked hard to offer routes to maintain pay through transferring workers to comparable roles, and in some cases to upskill those workers in scope. There may be details to iron out, of course, but that's why talks are so important. But as we made clear repeatedly, Unite should suspend the strike, they should accept the deal, and they should bring this dispute to an end. The Government will continue to be on the side of the people of Birmingham and to support the Council into creating a sustainable, a fair and a reliable waste service that its residents deserve.
Kevin Hollinrake, Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It is astounding that the Secretary of State, having had to resort to calling in the army to cover her blushes for her failure to resolve this situation, was not intending to make an oral statement to the House and had to be dragged before it by means of this urgent question. For she is failing, Mr Speaker, failing to stand up to the unions, failing to protect the residents of the UK's second city, failing to protect the reputation of our nation, and now resorting to being bailed out by our brave armed forces, which I note the Minister did not even mention. It is a national embarrassment, Mr Speaker. Now, I realise the Minister and the Secretary of State were not born until 1980, but many in this House and in the wider country remember the 1970s very well, the winter of discontent. It is clear with this government we risk going back to those days. To prevent that from happening, I offer him and the Secretary of State our support if the Minister will clarify and confirm what is the projected cost to the taxpayer for the involvement of the military. Will he rule out the humiliation of service personnel ever having to collect refuse? And will he commit to using the provisions of the Minimum Service Level Act to ensure residents receive a basic level of service, to reinstate the legislation that would allow the Council to commission agency workers to clean up the city until the strike is resolved, and finally to abandon the provisions in the Employment Rights Bill that give unions access to every single workplace in this country, that lower the threshold for union recognition and make it much easier for unions to call strikes. Doing this now, and he will have our support. But if he and she ducks the tough decisions to please her union paymasters, the tail, Mr Speaker, may once again wag the dog in this country, which could take it back to the 1970s.
Minister.
Yeah. Well, if that's a dog, it's more like a Bichon Frise attack. on the government, I'm afraid. It really did not land, because what do people in Birmingham want? In the context of a situation that is not acceptable, where rubbish was accumulating, the people of Birmingham want it to be resolved. And what they have in this government is a government that doesn't play party politics. We don't parade councils round in the way that the previous government did. What we do is to work together in partnership for the end that's important. And while they've been carping from the sidelines, they've been doing this for weeks now, they've not had a single solution. But they've had every single criticism, not a single solution. You'd be forgiven to believe you've not even been in power for 14 years when Birmingham was sent to the wall. Now, let me just pick up the MOD. Of course, we are appreciative of our colleagues in the MOD for the support that they have offered. And the 3 logistics advisors had made a difference. But they themselves have said that Birmingham is more than capable of making sure that the rounds are collected and the trucks are on the road as of this week, because that mutual support is important. But I need to pull him up on a comment that he made here. When he talks about the humiliation of collecting waste from the streets, the humiliation of decent working class people going out to provide a public service to millions of people across England is not a humiliation. It's a public service. It's one that is critical to our nation's interests. And to say that it's a job of humiliation, I would say that working class people, the bin collectors across this country, take pride in their work, and they deserve more respect from the bloody opposition.
Chair of the Select Committee, Florence Eshalomi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I associate myself with the remarks by the Minister on the passing of Pope Francis. May his perfect soul rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, it's important for us to remember the innocent residents who were caught up in this dispute and the fact that they've been suffering for many weeks without that refuse being collected. I think about the many families who had to celebrate Eid and seeing all that rubbish continue to pile up. In just over 4 weeks, there'll be another half term where, again, we'll have many families at home. So it's really important that the government continue to work closely with Birmingham and all parties to make sure this is resolved. The Minister outlined some of the concerns around the funding pressures that councils of all political parties have faced over the last few years. And he will know that he's handed out, and the government have handed out, exceptional financial support for a number of councils who continue to face challenges with their finances. Can the Minister assure the House that in the discussions with Birmingham and others, that will continue to support hard-working local government officers and making sure that their finances are back in a proper and fit manner way, so that we are not facing situations like what we are seeing happening in Birmingham?
Minister.
Can I thank the Chair of the Select Committee for that question? And in a way, it really hits at the heart of the fragile situation that we inherited as a government, which is after 14 years, Birmingham, and in fact many councils of all political stripes, have been sent to the wall by the previous government. And that was a testament, if you like, to the number of bankruptcy notices that were issued before. Now, what we've been able to do is to stabilise the sector through the recovery grant, the first time ever that the recovery grant was issued, and Birmingham was the largest beneficiary of that. So we have given that city the support that it needs. But of course, we want to make sure that the progress that we've seen over the last couple of weeks is maintained. And what I will say, and of course I appreciate completely the unacceptable scenes where waste was being built up on people's streets. It was not okay in normal time, but it certainly was not okay in half term when children were playing in their local parks and on their streets, which is why we moved quickly to make sure that that waste was removed. And the very fact now that 26,000 tonnes has been removed just shows the dedication of those frontline workers.
Vicky Slade, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I refer you to my declarations of interest? It's unacceptable that this dispute has dragged into a ninth week, and even more disgraceful that the people of Birmingham are now forced to clean up their own streets. But to those who gave up their Easter holidays to pick up rubbish for their neighbours, thank you. But let's be honest, you should never have had to do it. This goes way beyond Birmingham. It started with an equal pay claim that bankrupted the council, and so with widespread local government reorganisation ahead of us all, what is to stop it from happening again? As councils merge, staff will sit side by side doing the same job but on completely different pay from their colleagues. It's unjust, unsustainable, and it's a ticking time bomb. At BCP Council, where I was leader, 6 years after the reorganisation, pay harmonisation is still going on. We couldn't afford to meet everyone's expectations, and neither can most councils as they teeter on the edge. So what is the Minister doing to stop this from spiralling elsewhere and protecting residents from eye-watering tax hikes or devastating service cuts?
Well, I'm going to be careful not to stray too far from Birmingham, which is not affected by local government reorganisation, but to say that it's completely usual when looking at the transfer of the workforce that negotiations with the workers and trade unions take place to harmonise terms and conditions and pay. And so that will take place in the usual way, and we need to be careful that we don't set hares running unnecessarily. Now, the issue in Birmingham, in a way the foundational issue, is the issue of equal pay. And for far too long, and this is the heart of the issue, for far too long, women workers were paid far less than their male counterpart for the same comparable roles, and that went on for decades. And what that council has to face, in the way that other councils faced many years earlier, is that has to be resolved. You know, it cannot continue that women are being paid less than their male counterparts, and this, in the end, is about having that harmonisation in the right way.
Brigg Corgan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And may I thank the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for his support in addressing the public health concerns in Birmingham. And as he said, 26,000 tonnes of waste has now been cleared and weekly collections will resume. I want to put on record my thanks to everyone involved in the clean-up, including many volunteers. They are the best of Birmingham. Does the Minister agree it is right that the Council resolves equal pay issues, as over 7,000 women are due compensation now, and that is precisely what the deal on offer does, while ensuring that no worker has to lose pay?
And that's precisely the issue here with the worker role that really started the strike action to begin with, that there was an enhanced payment made for that role that did not stand when it went through job evaluation when compared to women who were doing similar roles elsewhere in the council. And that can't stand. And there can be nothing in this agreement, and where there has to be a red line, is that there can be nothing reached by way of an agreement that compromises the council position on equal pay that builds up a liability for the future. But I absolutely pay tribute to the community groups and to the frontline workers that have made sure that the response to the clean-up has been one of cooperation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Will the Minister make a point of thanking the well-run and cost-effective Conservative councils that have either helped or offered to help clear out this terrible mess? And will he bear in mind that it's not just the bin strike which my poor long-suffering constituents in the royal town of Sutton Coldfield have had to suffer? It's also the pending closure of our libraries and the massive hike in council tax. And does he understand why so many of us want to see a proper judge-led inquiry into how bankrupt Birmingham has got Britain's second city into this mess? And will he also bear in mind that this is a dispute between two wings of the Labour Party? And whatever I may think of the council that he leads, it is quite wrong that my constituent, the leader of the council, should have had a photograph of his house put on social media by Unite. And will he condemn that action by Unite?
Well, I mean, I'll be clear, because what I saw over the last few weeks were union officials who were having photographs of their house, and I saw the same trade union using photographs of the council leader's house and the cabinet member's house, and neither of those are okay. This is a fraught dispute already. It requires good faith of all parties, and it requires negotiation and to be in the same room and be able to talk through the issues in the interest of the workers and the people of the city of Birmingham. And our hope and expectation is that whatever has happened, a line is drawn, and that they move forward in good faith.
Sorry, Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I refer attention to the Register of Members' interest. The crisis over bin collections in Birmingham has dragged on for far too long, and my constituents have suffered significantly as a result. Whilst I understand the financial pressures on the council, clearly it is unreasonable to expect any worker to accept a pay cut. Will the Minister commit to taking all steps possible to encourage good faith negotiations between both parties, and that a fair deal can be reached so that this vital service can be restored without any further disruption?
So, I mean, in terms of equal pay, I don't think there's been a single example, although I'm prepared to be corrected, where equal pay hasn't, in all cases, had on the edges winners and losers. That is the element of equal pay that we have to accept in the end. The envelope is not unlimited. and so the books do have to balance. But on the pay, the issue of the work or role and how that's being changed and whether workers need to lose pay or not, the council is offering a sideways move to street scene on the same grade 3, which will mean no loss of income. They're offering workers a move to this, an equivalent grade 3 role. Even if training is required, they will provide that training. And they're also offering an upgrade to LGV driver training so that currently loaders can upgrade to being a driver, which of course carries a higher payment than their current role.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recall asking the Minister on a previous occasion about getting support from military personnel, and the Minister at that point said that I'd taken my point from 0 to 100 very quickly. The difficulty with this government is that they've been very slow to react. Now, I was out last week Thursday with a local organisation picking up bin bags with youth workers that had been working 12 hours shifts during the morning and then spending their evening cleaning up the streets. What the Minister's failed to raise in this chamber is that there are thousands and thousands of tonnes of recyclable waste which is not being collected, encouraging further fly tipping. Yeah. So when will this government intervene, resolve the issue? The bin workers work hard, and there's up to 200 which will lose up to £8,000, and that needs to be resolved.
Well, I mean, I share his appreciation of community volunteers who are cleaning up the streets, as much as I welcome the hard work of hundreds of frontline council workers who have stepped in to make sure that the accumulated waste can be clear, and their efforts have meant that 26,000 tonnes of accumulated waste has now been cleared. And so we can share that at least. But on the question of when the government is appropriate to come in and offer support, well, that's when the major incident is called. And from that moment, he will know that I've been in Birmingham every week since then, that there have been daily update calls taking place with the council, and we've been providing central support to the council to clear up the city.
Florence Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for the efforts that he has made to keep Birmingham MPs informed on a cross-party basis during this dispute. I would also like to associate myself with the condemnations made in this place of the publication of photographs of the houses of some of the parties who are members of the dispute. My residents in Birmingham Northfield want to see a service that is not the same as before the strike. It must be better, and I hope that the Minister, I know, shares that ambition. But given we've heard today about the 1970s, it is not so long ago that a Conservative Secretary of State stood at this dispatch box and said that he was delighted to announce 12% cuts for Birmingham's budget, the sharpest of any unitary authority. Does he agree that the one word missing from the Shadow Secretary of State's question was sorry?
Well, I mean, we've been here repeatedly, really, at questions and statements, and even oral questions that have been asked in the House, and not on a single occasion has the Shadow Secretary of State or even Shadow Ministers accepted their role in government for 14 years that have driven councils of all colours to the wall. We need to bear in mind that commissioners were brought in under the previous government, that Birmingham had to declare bankruptcy under the previous government. The only difference now is that they have a government on side willing to meet them financially, and that's why the recovery grant was so important, but also to meet them in spirit and through our actions, which is why we're working in partnership to clean up the streets and to get Birmingham clean.
Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Which legacy is the Minister most proud of? Rubbish and rats in Birmingham, or Labour's breach of its promise to the electorate to freeze council tax?
Yeah. I'm sure that sounded a better question when it was being drafted this morning. But in terms of the substance, I don't think anyone takes pride in the strike action and the waste that was accumulated on the street. This is a very serious issue. It's not acceptable at all that a major incident had to be called and that the public health concerns were as prevalent as they were, which is why we took quick action. It's why the streets have been cleaned to the tune of 26,000 tonnes. It's why there are more daily collections taking place now in terms of tonnage than there were in routine time, to make sure that they catch up and don't slip back. But we recognise, of course, that in the end, the only solution to this is to deal with the underlying strike action that is causing that disruption.
John MacDonald.
I refer to my register of interest. I'm a member of Unite. In fact, I'm very proud of it. I think there's 4 generations of my family that have been. Can I say to the Minister that not to rise to the provocations opposite, There's a difference between having 3 military advisers than having troops on the streets, which would be seen as an act of provocation and worsening the situation. Can I suggest to him instead that either the Secretary of State or he now convene the meetings between the Council and the Union to secure progress in the negotiations?
Well, of course, in terms of communication, there has been almost daily communication with the Council. The trade unions, of course, have made representations too. But we do need to be really clear here about appropriate roles and responsibilities and where lines of accountability are. The government is not the employer of the workforce in Birmingham. The Council is the employer of the workforce in Birmingham. And it's for the employer and the employees to reach an agreement that both can accept. Of course, we urge both parties to negotiate in good faith. We believe that the deal on the table is a good deal. And I think it's correct to say, of course, workers have the right to make their representations known. In the end, though, the Council has to take into account all of its workforce, including over 7,000 women who historically were paid far less for equivalent roles than their male counterparts. And that's a foundational issue at the heart of this.
Mr. Speaker, despite assurances from the dispatch box before the Easter recess, we continue to see piles of rubbish on the streets in Birmingham. We continue to see the costs mounting, and the rats, the squeaky blinders, do continue to roam freely in the streets of Britain's second city. So I'd like to ask the Minister again, what is his government and the Labour-run Birmingham City Council doing to bring an end to the strike? Because enough is enough. Residents want to see an end to this.
So there's still work taking place. I mean, in terms of, I should address actually the issue of rodents, because that is a serious issue. Nobody wants to see rats around the street, particularly around the accumulated waste that was taking place. Which is why we welcome the Council's decision to suspend the call-out for pest control to make sure that households, when they do report rodents, aren't disadvantaged or have to have the financial impact of that. So we welcome that move in terms of the substance of the question. In terms of the response to this, we say from day one that the accumulated waste was not acceptable and it was a public health hazard, which is why the government stepped in to support the council to make sure that we could get more trucks out of the depot, that the amount of waste being collected could increase, and the amount of routine collections could be regularised. And I'm pleased to say that progress has been made. But of course, the thing that will ultimately resolve this is for the trade unions and the council to reach an agreement that brings the strike action to an end.
On promotion of Leeds United, Richard Burton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I take that as a congratulation from the Speaker of the House of Commons at the promotion of Leeds United, so thank you very much. That's the most popular thing I've said in here for some time, which is saying something. I'm a Unite member, a trade union member, proud to be so. I remember the 2009 Leeds bin strike when the Conservative and Lib Dem run council tried to cut the bin workers' pay by £9,000, by up to £6,000, sorry. A 3-month strike followed, which was ultimately successful. I just want to raise the general point with the Minister when I hear much of what's been said in the Chamber. It's always wrong to castigate trade unions, an important part of our civil democracy, as the enemy within. And when we're talking about the Unite the Union and the strike, or any strike, it's not union officials that call the strike, it's trade union members. So Unite the Union means the bin workers. And it's really important that we don't allow trade unions and trade unionism to be demonised in relation to this dispute or any other.
I mean, what we can certainly agree on is that people, of course, have the right to strike, but people also have the right to go to work. And what we saw were the restriction of the number of bin trucks that could leave the depot. That had a significant impact on the amount of waste that could be collected. And the direct result of that was the accumulation of tens of thousands of waste on the street. What we really want, in the end, is for Unite, as the negotiating body of the workforce that it represents, and Birmingham City Council as the employer, to get around the table on the deal that has been tabled and to iron out the differences, if there are differences, to reach an agreement. And in the meantime, if that's going to take longer, we strongly encourage Unite to suspend strike actions during those negotiations.
Gavin Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Birmingham City Council is the largest authority, local authority in the UK by population, and for sadly many years it has been struggling with very severe problems that have been impacting on its residents. The government has engaged in local government reorganisation over much of the country. There's large parts of Birmingham City Council would maybe be better administered elsewhere out of the current City of Birmingham boundaries. Would the Minister look at actually whether it's time to review the boundaries of Birmingham City Council to see if it's just got to the stage where it's so large that it cannot function properly for its residents?
Well, I don't think anyone could criticise my work ethic, but I think reorganising a third of England and 20 million residents being affected is quite a reorganisation to deliver, and we should focus on that. There is no intention, as it stands, to reorganise Birmingham, but there is absolutely an intention to resolve the underlying trade union dispute that's taking place, to get people back to work, and to reach an agreement that is acceptable.
Mr. Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just point out that this strike did start under this Labour government, under a Labour council, and continues, despite all his hand-wringing and anguish, under a Labour government, under a Labour council, and it really is futile for the government to try and pretend it's all somebody else's fault, least of all the previous government. And can he avoid also misrepresenting what my right honourable friend said? He made a perfectly reasonable suggestion that he should reinstate the legislation that would allow agency workers to be brought in to pick up the rubbish off Birmingham streets. Why won't he do that? Because he's pussyfooting around, kowtowing to his Labour paymasters, the trade unions.
Well, I mean, that's certainly the award for the silliest question yet. There is no kowtowing, there is no bowing. We played this with an absolutely straight bat in the interest of the people of Birmingham, in the way that the people of Birmingham would expect. When it comes to the issue of agency workers, our judgment is that that isn't required because the mutual aid that's been brought in from neighbouring councils and housing associations and the redeployment of frontline staff from elsewhere in the council has dealt with the accumulated waste that has been developing over that period, and we've now seen that 26,000 tonnes of waste cleared. And as I said before, now that trucks are leaving the depot as usual in most cases, there are now more collections taking place in terms of tonnage a day than in regular time. So the council is on top of that, and there isn't the need in the way that he speaks to bring in additional agency staff above and beyond.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Given that the Minister no doubt sincerely believes that the offer on the table is a good one, why does he think the unions are not accepting it?
Well, I mean, it's clear through the negotiations that there are a number of moving parts, and I should also be clear that we are not replicating those negotiations in this chamber. Those negotiations should take place between the employer and the employees and the trade unions, and we shouldn't be trying to circumnavigate that here. But our belief is it's an agreement that strikes the right balance between giving support to the workers in scope who are affected, so the worko roles that are in scope, but not undermining the equal pay work that's been done, that for far too long has seen women underpaid for the work that they've been doing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister failed to answer my honourable friend's question on whether troops would be used to clear up the mess. Would he now do so? And with the Defence Secretary sitting next to him, who will know very well that a trained soldier's salary starts at around £25,000, will he say that in the event that troops are used, that they will also receive, as part of the MACA arrangements, arduous duty payments?
Well, as I said before, and I do think I've covered this at least a couple of times in the contribution, we are grateful to our colleagues in the MOD for the logistical support that they have provided. It was 3 members of staff on logistical planning, and they've had a significant impact, and the council are grateful to that, and we are grateful to that. What there isn't a requirement for are for troops to be deployed on the street to collect waste, because the council is getting on top of it. Now, we don't take that for granted, and we don't want any disruption to that. But to be clear, the military are not needed on the streets of Birmingham. The council have it in hand, and workers are doing that work today.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Genuine question to the Minister. I am a little bit confused as to what these 3 supermen and women from the MOD or the military have done, because one of the principles of mutual aid, military aid to the civil authority is that the people you're helping have not to have the capacity themselves, and it's unreasonable to expect them to grow it in a timely manner. So what have they done that Birmingham City Council couldn't do themselves?
I'm usually a bit suspicious when somebody starts off the question with "this is a genuine question," but actually that was a proper question. Members could learn from that. In terms of the underlying question as to the added value that the MOD, calm down. The added value the MOD were able to provide were essentially any council has an organised routine and rotas for getting the bins collected in a given place. In Birmingham's situation, where they had mutual aid offers from other councils, they had to work out how best to deploy quite different offers of support in terms of trucks and available workers across the city in a different way. So the logistical workers from the MOD were supporting the creation of those new collection rounds as part of the response to clear the accumulated waste.
David Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister, or the Pied Piper as he's quickly becoming known as, clear up the record, please? In his opening statement, he said that the military offered their support to come and clear up this mess. Did they offer, or were they ordered by his department to come and support because his government can't stand up to the unions?
So to answer I've covered already the value that the MOD have provided, and of course we work in partnership on that. The offer of support was made, it was given to the council. They have received that gratefully, but the MOD have also been very clear with the logistical planners they've had who have been on the ground in Birmingham that the council is at the point now where it doesn't need the support from those logistical planners because it has the collection rounds in place, which I hope he would welcome.
Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I refer members to my register of interest. Just 8 weeks ago, the Minister for Local Government told me on the Select Committee there is a lot of good work taking place in Birmingham. The government wants to create super councils covering 500,000 people over vast areas to manage bin collections and other vital services, against the wishes of my constituents in Vauxhall. We've seen the result of this in Birmingham. So does the Minister believe that tons of rubbish on the streets is the model the rest of the country should follow?
But in a way, that shows the misunderstanding of why Birmingham is in the situation it is. It makes no more sense to say that Birmingham's problems are because of its size and scale than it would to say, well, look at the debt liabilities that are built up by some of the smallest councils in the country and the way that they've been borrowing many hundreds or thousands of times their revenue. These are, in a way, down to long-term issues. Some of it is the foundational funding that that council has been given in Birmingham. But in the end, Birmingham is getting its house in order. It's not an easy process, and they would say themselves they've got a way to go. But when it comes to resolving the historic equal pay liabilities, when it comes to resolving the Oracle IT system, there's a significant financial liability to the council. When it comes to modernising its workforce and that future operating model, the council is making progress, but it's got some way to go.
That now allows us to come to Jim Shannon.
Can I thank the Minister very much for his answers to those very difficult questions. The Minister will understand and know, of course, the absolute necessity of military intervention in civil life in Northern Ireland over a great many years. Whilst it is never an easy option, does the Minister not agree that if it is the only option, if a pay deal can be reached to ensure that disease does not spread through the city, that action has to be taken before the ill and the vulnerable pay the price of the standoff?
Well, I mean, as it stands, the situation for most streets at most times has returned to normal service. The accumulated waste that was building up that was not acceptable at all has been removed, and the 26,000 tonnes of that has been removed. In most places, at most times, the routine collections of the bins are taking place as normal, and over 100 trucks a day are leaving the depots as usual. And so we hope that we don't return to the scenes that he talks about for the very reasons that he expresses. It's not acceptable from a public health point of view, and it has consequences.
That completes the urgent question. Let the front bench change over.